Ian the Future Garry is probably one of the fastest rising stars, pounding his way through the octagon and the welterweight roster. Sure, I wouldn't call him a one-punch KO artist like Alex Pereira per se, but his insane striking and kickboxing prowess definitely gets the job done, seeing how it's brought him from a humble Irish background all the way to the big leagues. But hey, there's much more to the Future than just his octagon run. From the time he almost beat up a clueless fan after a UFC event, to the time he permanently got kicked out from Leon Edwards' gym, to the controversy surrounding his possible three-way open relationship with his wife and his nutritionist, here are 10 fascinating facts about Ian the Future Garry. Number 10. He's a former Cage Warriors welterweight champ. That's right, Garry's road to the octagon began with none other than the Irish MMA promotion, or as I call it, the House of Conor McGregor. Much like his idol, McGregor, who was also a double champion in Cage Warriors, Ian also went on the road to the welterweight championship. In fact, his Cage Warriors run was even more stellar than Conor's, seeing how he went 7-0 over 2 years, leading up to one of his toughest face-offs in the league against Jack Grant. Now, I say tough because this was the only fight that ended in a unanimous decision. And of course, the gold was Garry's for the taking.
In the second round.
Number 9. He's a black belt in judo. I can't say I'm surprised, seeing how the kid's got all bases covered, even though most of his wins come from a skull-bashing kick or a barrage of 1-2s. His early MMA training covers all bases. The Future really lives up to his nickname, especially when you see him grinding his opponents on both his feet and on the mat. Garry's combat history goes all the way back to when he was 10 years old and took up training in boxing. With time, his love for the sport kept growing, and so did his commitment. Since Garry already had a knack for locking fists, he decided to become an all-rounder. And hey, what better way to check all angles than dive into judo? Turns out, the Future was just as good at grappling as he was at striking, seeing how he landed a black belt in judo at just the age of 18. Number 8. He dropped out of college to pursue his MMA dream. Yep, Ian was actually a student at the Dublin Institute of Technology. And in 2017, after just 1 year in college, he knew that formal education wasn't for him. The Irish sensation had always been inspired by McGregor, and following in his footsteps, he knew he was a born fighter, and sitting in lecture halls just wasn't the best use of his time. In fact, college wasn't even his own choice. He'd only signed up for classes because of his mother, Suzanne. So at the age of 19, the Future took his last step in the classroom and went straight to Team KF in Dublin to focus on his MMA game. Number 7. Garry almost fought a fan after his UFC 285 win. The Future hit a minor speed bump during his UFC 285 matchup against Song Keenan, when Keenan scored an early knockdown. But that didn't stop the Irish sensation from bouncing right back up and finishing Keenan in the 3rd round. Unfortunately, the knockdown wasn't his only rough patch, cause Ian almost beat up a fan right after the event. Can't say I blame him though, considering the fan was a little too excited, screaming that he had won $50,000, to the point that he bumped into the fighter. Ian calmly told him to relax, and that's when the fan went absolutely nuts. He even threatened Garry himself with his own street fighting skills. Luckily for him, Garry was never one for street fights. And even though he was at the brink of knocking the fan out cold, the confrontation came to an end without any flying punches. This was indeed the luckiest day for that guy. Besides making 50 G's, he was spared of getting some brain cells knocked out of his brain. Number 6. Garry currently trains at Kill Cliff FC. No wonder the man's on such a hot streak, because Kill Cliff is home to some of the deadliest fighters on the entire UFC roster. Kamaru Usman, Michael Chandler, and Gilbert Burns are just some of the big names who train alongside the Future. Fun fact though, Garry doesn't have an individual manager, but Kill Cliff FC is basically his team as of now, under the guidance of Henry Hooft, famous for his kickboxing skills, and Greg Jones, possibly one of the best university grapplers in history, Garry has found himself the best place to hone his skills. Number 5. He is unbeaten in his professional career. I mean, it all makes sense considering his fighting background, but still, the future boasts a record that many can only hope to achieve. Continuing from his stellar streak in Cage Warriors, the Irish sensation got an offer he could never refuse from none other than the top MMA boss, Dana White himself. Ian made his mark from the get-go, starting his UFC career with an insane first-round KO against Jordan Williams. From that moment onwards, the future has never looked back, going for 6-0 in the octagon as well. Add that to his Cage Warrior stint, and the man has an undefeated record with 13 wins to his name. Number 4. He was kicked out of Leon Edwards' gym. Yep, looks like Killcliff is only home right now, and he's not allowed to step foot in Team Renegade Gym anymore. According to the future, the reason behind his ban is none other than Edwards himself. Garry claims that the coaches at the gym didn't want their star fighter to feel insecure and doubt himself while training in his own gym. But Rocky's take on the matter is completely different. Leon says the real reason Garry isn't welcome in his gym anymore is because of cultural differences.
I feel like obviously came to the gym, just didn't fit into the gym. You know, this is like the third gym now he's been kicked out of. It is what it is. He's just a different kind of guy. It's hard to to blend with, you know. Everywhere it goes, there's the camera there. Everywhere it goes, his wife is there, his kids is there.
The future had a big mouth and even had issues with showing up on time and taking training seriously, so he just didn't fit in with the rest of the squad. Now, one of the two has to be lying. I'll leave it up to you to decide who is. Let me know your opinion in the comments. Number 3. The future is on a vegan diet nowadays. Here's something you never thought you'd hear about any fighter, much less the number 10 welterweight on the UFC roster. But it's true. Of course, any fighter's diet is controlled by their nutritionist and coach. And in Garry's case, his nutritionist, Richard Cullen, seems to be going in the opposite direction. Safe to say, the news did not sit well with his fans, as he received a ton of backlash for going too strong on the veggies. But hey, the man's already 6'3". Maybe staying lean is the only way he can remain on the welterweight roster. Number 2. Garry's wife, Layla Machado, is an author. I don't really know if you can call her an author, considering she wrote one satirical book titled How to Be a Wag. For those of you who don't know, WAG stands for Wives and Girlfriends. And not just any wife and girlfriend, a WAG is a sports athlete's partner, someone who's in it for the money. And since Layla's married to a man who seems to be doing quite well for himself, and she also seems to be a coach on how to land these money-printing machines, you can imagine how much she's being trolled by the internet. Still, Layla came to her own rescue and fired back at the fans, claiming it was just for satire and nothing else. And to prove her point, she went on to call out Americans for not understanding British humor and sarcasm. But let me tell you, she is 14 years older than Garry. She wrote How to Be a Wag, and she brought back her ex to be Garry's nutritionist. How insane is that? If we put those pieces together, something tells me there's a high chance that indeed she is a wag. Let me know what you think in the comments. Number 1. Yes, Layla's ex-husband is actually Garry's nutritionist. I bet the vegan diet makes a lot more sense now. Layla was indeed married to Richard Cullen in 2014, but the two split up a while later. Fast forward, she started dating Garry, and call it a coincidence, but Cullen was brought in as his nutritionist at the same time. Trust me though, it gets even worse. Apparently, Cullen's not just his nutritionist, but also the third wheel in their marriage. It's been reported that he travels and stays with the couples themselves. In other words, the man's pretty much living with them, which again is bad news for Garry, but good news for all those hecklers on the internet. I mean, as long as he is happy and doesn't hurt other people, outside the octagon of course, he can do whatever makes him happy.
Good morning. Right, there's been a lot of shit being said online about me, my family, my personal life. All of it's fucking nuts.
And if that is being in a three-way relationship, so be it. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Go ahead and tell us your valuable opinion in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our videos. And that's it for today. Until then, remember to protect yourself at all times.